Hello, and welcome to Exposed News Outlet, where we shed light on topics that matter most. I'm your host, Andrea. Today, we're exploring Trump and Elon Musk's breakup, the week of Trump's 79th birthday, and she didn't hold back. As we navigate the complexities of our world, it's essential to stay informed and engaged. By subscribing to our channel, enabling notifications, and sharing our content, you're supporting our mission to provide thought-provoking insights and inspire positive change. Thank you for being part of our community. For those interested, I will leave my link for my GoFundMe as I'm growing my channel and resources. Also starting a new podcast coming soon with a few of my BFFs. It should be amazing. So stay tuned for that. Be sure to follow our social media accounts on Facebook, TikTok, and Blue Sky Social. Links in the description box below. And without further ado, let's get to the video. Trump-Musk feud escalates. The recent feud between Donald Trump and Elon Musk has taken a dark turn, with Musk accusing Trump of being implicated in the Jeffrey Epstein files. Time to drop the really big bomb at real Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. End quote. Musk posted on X. Trump responded by threatening to terminate government contracts with Musk's businesses, citing billions and billions of dollars in savings. It's funny how it takes them getting into a cat fight for him to say all the quiet parts out loud, what we've already been saying for months now. The Epstein files controversy. Musk's accusations comes amid a larger controversy surrounding Trump's connections to Epstein. Trump has not directly addressed the allegations, but his administration has been vocal about its opposition to releasing the Epstein files. Gee, I wonder why. Watch this clip.
The civil war between Donald Trump and Elon Musk is not just an outburst between two of the most awful men in America. It is also between Elon Musk and Donald Trump's White House. And of course, that includes Donald Trump's terrible press secretary, Karoline Leavitt, who was asked about the most shocking revelation of this civil war today, which is that Donald Trump is in the Epstein files, according to Elon Musk. And when Karoline Leavitt was confronted with that scandal, she knelt down, lost it, and accidentally threw her boss under the bus in a shocking moment that we are going to get into. Now, before we can get into Karoline Leavitt's response, we have to begin where this all started, and that's the second post that Elon made today about the Epstein files that we can see right here. Elon Musk responded to a video of MSNBC detailing Donald Trump's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein that we can see right here.
Of a Mar-a-Lago party shows Trump giving Epstein his personal attention. The footage, shot in November of 1992, before Trump opened the resort as a club, shows the future president surrounded by cheerleaders for the Buffalo Bills and Miami Dolphins, capturing Trump's fun-loving bachelor lifestyle for an appearance on Faith Daniels' NBC talk show.
We're going to get great ratings in your show.
Trump is surrounded by women as music blares in the background. After a while, Trump goes to greet three new guests. Among them, the financier Jeffrey Epstein. More than a decade before his guilty plea on state prostitution charges. Later in the footage, Trump is seen talking to Epstein and another man as women are dancing in front of them. Trump alternates between dancing and pointing out women to Epstein and the other man and telling Epstein about the cameras. Though exactly what they say is difficult to understand as they discuss the women and their appearances, Trump gestures to one and appears to say to Epstein, "Look at her back there. She's hot." And then Trump says something else into Epstein's ear that makes him double over with laughter.
He is charming. He is able to convince people. So he tells everybody what they want to hear.
So how do you know this?
That was supposed to show you.
He has a sense of humor. He can be funny.
He's great. His ability to sell. It's very much like Clinton. Both Bill and Donald have the ability to go over to a fat, ugly woman, say, "You are the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." So you probably know he had a scalp reduction. Because he had the same male pattern movement that we all have. He's not he's a horrible human being. He does nasty things to his best friends' wives. Anyone who first tries to gain your trust and then uses it to do bad things. That's how we go.
We have all known about Donald Trump's relationship to Jeffrey Epstein for some time now. I've made countless videos on it, even though the mainstream media refuses to cover this story. But the idea that Elon Musk thinks he can frame himself as some hero here by calling it out at the last second as he's fighting with Donald Trump, thinking he's exposing this, is just preposterous. It's laughable. You got the man elected president when you knew about his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. You didn't learn about this today. You've been defending him the whole time. Now that, it's sour grapes, you turn on Trump with information you already knew. It is just gross from both of them. And that is a point that Nicole Wallace made really well that I want to check out before we get into Carolyn Levitt.
Why does any of this matter, right? Two tarantulas in a bowl. Why does it matter? Well, here's why. When the most powerful person in our government fights with the richest person in the world, we, as a public, get to peer deep inside the most corrupt and superficial alliance in American political history. And as they claw and strike rhetorically at one another, they affirm our deepest concerns and suspicions. Trump confirms that Musk was always only in it to enrich his companies, and Musk confirms that Trump was always for sale.
Caitlin Collins reported the White House response to Musk saying the Epstein files haven't been made public because Trump is in them, with Press Secretary Carolyn Levitt saying, "This is an unfortunate episode from Elon, who is unhappy with the One Big Beautiful Bill because it does not include the policies he wanted. The president is focused on passing this historic piece of legislation and making our country great again." So Carolyn Levitt directly asked, is Trump in the Epstein files? Is that why you're not releasing them? And she doesn't say anything about the Epstein files. That is a clear deflection, and it's also kind of an admission of guilt. Donald Trump refuses to address this because we know the truth. Elon has known the truth the whole time. It doesn't make him a hero for sharing it now. He's certainly not a hero. But Carolyn Levitt is kind of throwing Donald Trump under the bus by refusing to answer this question because we know what her non-answer means. The White House for so long has been terrified of this question. They've been running away from it. But now the man with the biggest social media following on the planet, who uses the platform predominantly used by Republicans, who owns the whole thing, is making sure all of them see the one thing Donald Trump wants hidden from his base. This is an absolute disaster, and there's no amount of spin that Carolyn Levitt can try to put on this ball to deflect, because when she does, she only makes it look worse for Donald Trump. That was a complete implosion from her, and it makes Trump just look so bad. But it's not the only thing that they are trying to hide lately. Of course, we want to cover this civil war, but in part, it is a distraction in many ways from what Donald Trump is trying to accomplish, taking away healthcare from millions of Americans, devastating this country for decades to come, all in service of his billionaire buddies. And another plan that Donald Trump is trying to hide, making a database of the information of all Americans, something called out by Congressman Dan Goldman in this clip right here that I want to take a look at.
I think you raise a very interesting point, Mr. Jordan, Chairman Jordan, wanting to make sure that a warrant is obtained to search Americans' data. So I recognize we're here focused on the Cloud Act, and it's an important issue. I don't dispute that. But in the times we're in, this seems quaint and intellectual, academic discussion. And in reality, what we're dealing with is an administration, current administration, that is trying to categorize, gather, and streamline data of Americans given with access by a private company. Now, let me explain a little bit, and I want to ask some questions. Many of you, I'm sure, have heard of Palantir, which is a large data company, has a lot of connections to Elon Musk, to Doge. And in March, Donald Trump issued an executive order that would increase the sharing of all unclassified data between and among federal agencies. It directed agency heads to authorize and facilitate both the intra and inter-agency sharing and consolidation of unclassified agency records. Now, a New York Times report in May outlined in great detail how the president has employed Palantir to carry out this executive order, essentially to merge all data from all different executive branch agencies into one single database. Now, it's unclear who would control that database, who would have access to it, what searches would be done, and there seem to be no guardrails about that. Another New York Times article says that the administration, that this database would have 314 different points of data about every American. Literally every American, 314 various categories of data will be consolidated into one database by a private company, Palantir. Now, my colleagues on the other side of the aisle often express concern about government surveillance, about ensuring that we get search warrants in the context of 702, which is a small universe of already obtained information that we know are communications with people of interest from of foreign nationalities. Here, we just have every American's data put into one database with no guidelines, no restrictions. We don't know what Palantir is doing. We don't know what Doge is doing. We don't know what Elon Musk is doing. It essentially creates a one-stop shop for all Americans' data, which, as we're talking about cybersecurity, I'm sure you all agree that creates a tremendous cybersecurity risk if China or Russia were to hack this. Now, the chairman of this committee has said in the past, quote, Congress has struggled, of this subcommittee, Mr. Biggs, Congress has struggled for 4 years with a corrupt presidential administration, meaning the Biden administration, that further expanded the opportunities for the government to spy on its citizens. So there was nothing in the Biden administration that approximates this collection of data, this opportunity for the government to spy on its citizens. And I'm not even talking about breaking laws under the tax code and sharing tax information with immigration enforcement agencies. I'm not even talking about sharing, the tax information or Social Security Administration information. This is just every piece of data that is out there in the government's control, consolidated with one private company and one database. And so I would ask my friend, Chairman Biggs, to think about whether, if you are truly worried about government surveillance, why are we not doing any oversight of Palantir, its contracts with the government, its consolidation of all Americans' personal information into one database and the cybersecurity risks? And I really hope, in all seriousness, that you will do oversight over that if you do truly care about government surveillance of citizens. And I yield back.
healthcare cuts, and tax hikes. The Trump-Musk feud unfolds as Republicans push to cut healthcare benefits for millions of Americans, more than 14 million to be exact, while offering tax breaks to the wealthiest billionaires, the oligarchs. The proposed bill would cut healthcare benefits. Approximately 14 million people would lose healthcare coverage due to proposed cuts. Tax breaks for the wealthy. The bill would provide tax-free rides for the wealthiest Americans, and get this, tax hikes for the middle and lower class. Meanwhile, middle and lower class Americans could face tax hikes as the cost of living skyrockets. Constitutional rights and due process. Critics argue that Trump's policies, including the healthcare cuts and tax hikes, violate the constitutional rights of thousands of citizens and immigrants. The lack of due process in these policies has sparked widespread outrage. Watch this clip.
While dear, sweet Senator Joni Ernst is telling you, her constituents, that we're all going to die, Joni gets a food allowance, a per diem, every day for food. $68 a day. And in places where food costs more, she gets $92 a day. But Joni said, you're going to die because you can't have SNAP and we've got to cut Medicaid. We can't do this, people. We've got to fight back.
So we just got back from Los Angeles after visiting with immigration stakeholders, after witnessing on the ground the situation there, and attending a bail hearing for David Huerta, a union leader who was arrested while witnessing one of these ICE immigration raids. Before I get into the situation in LA, Trump's calling out the military, I want to talk about the backdrop for all of this, and that is Donald Trump's promise of mass deportations, but most particularly his promise to focus on violent criminals.
And we're going to start with the bad ones. And the local police will know the bad ones. They'll know their name and their middle name and their numbers, and they'll know everything. And we'll be able to work with the local police.
Because it's the breach of that promise that's at the heart of a lot of these difficulties. That is, Trump promised to go after immigrants who are also violent criminals, but instead he has been completely indiscriminate in who he is picking up or ordering his immigration authorities to pick up. Months ago, for example, I met with farm workers. I met with the children of farm workers who had had their dads deported away from them, people who were stopped at traffic stops or at gas stations, people who had no criminal record whatsoever. We then witnessed ICE agents going to middle schools, going to hospitals. We're increasingly seeing ICE agents show up at immigration court proceedings and then grabbing people who are showing up for the proceedings as they're supposed to do. So they've gotten far away from the idea of focusing on violent offenders. Their practices deviate dramatically from past practices, and it's basically grab anyone they can, including grab U.S. citizens who look to be of Mexican origin. They're getting swept up in this. Some of them are getting arrested and finding it difficult to get themselves released, even though they are U.S. citizens. So in the midst of all this, in the midst of the White House's upset that they haven't been able to deport that many people, we see now raids like we did in San Diego a week ago, where ICE agents went to a restaurant, a popular restaurant in San Diego, and just indiscriminately did a raid there. That prompted a lot of the citizens in San Diego to push back, to protest, to express their deep dissatisfaction with the policies of the government. And that led to this past several days. Another set of indiscriminate raids at Home Depots, at other workplaces, and Los Angelenos taking to the street to protest these actions. Now, those protests started out very peacefully, and I think, in fact, the vast, vast majority of people participating in those protests have been peaceful, but there have been some very violent actions There have been the throwing of cinder blocks at police cars, the smashing and burning of these driverless cars, and other vandalism and a lot of graffiti vandalism. Some of that action appears to be, these equal opportunity agitators that seem to, like a moth to the flame, want to bring about their own mayhem and chaos, even though the immigration organizations and stakeholders have consistently urged peaceful, nonviolent protest. So these have been the circumstances in which Donald Trump, eager for a fight, called out the National Guard. Now here's the thing about the National Guard. The National Guard is a military force that is under state command, but can be federalized. Almost always it is with the approval of the governor of a state who makes a request of the federal government for the deployment of the Guard to deal with a domestic disturbance, like a protest that has gone out of hand or the obstruction of government buildings. But here, there was no need to call out the National Guard. The governor didn't believe it was necessary. It wasn't necessary for local law enforcement. And the president, not only without seeking the approval of the governor, but over the opposition of Governor Newsom, nevertheless called out 2,000 National Guardsmen. Now, that hasn't happened since the mid-1960s. That hasn't happened since there was an effort to integrate the schools in Arkansas when the segregationist governor of that state opposed the efforts to integrate the schools, and the Guard was called out to help enforce the peace, to essentially help enforce those civil rights laws. So very different circumstances today. This is Donald Trump calling in the Guard where it was not needed, but calling in the Guard essentially to add fuel to the fire, knowing that it would be an incendiary and escalatory act. Far from wanting to keep the peace, this is Donald Trump wanting a pretext for the use of military force. Now, the administration has been murky about their legal basis to call in the Guard. They have suggested that they're relying on Title 10, which is a part of our statutory code respecting the Pentagon and the Defense Department. But there are conditions that have to be met in order for that to be utilized. And one of the conditions is that it be done through the governor. Well, clearly that was not done here. It also has to be necessary to enforce the laws in the midst of some obstruction or rebellion. That is also not the case here because local law enforcement, California law enforcement, was more than capable of dealing with this. But the president didn't stop with this unauthorized call for the federalizing of California's Guard. It has also called for the mobilization of about 700 Marines, which just escalates the matter further. Now, these Marines don't have a clear task to do. The guards that have been deployed, for example, are largely deployed to federal buildings, ostensibly to protect federal buildings. They're mostly sleeping on floors and have not been provided food by the federal government. There's been such ill planning, so that's an obligation the state has had to take on. That deployment is estimated to cost over $130 million, another waste of taxpayer resources. So this is Donald Trump, once again, escalating a crisis, trying to sow chaos so that he can call in the military to stop a crisis that he has created. Now, with respect to the actions of these agitators and the violence that they have used and the vandalism they have used, all of that is horribly inappropriate. All that should be condemned vigorously, consistently, and loudly. They have no place in these protests, and that violence has got to stop. But we also don't want to add fuel to the fire by bringing in military forces when they're not needed, when they will instead be a provocation. Ironically, you've got Donald Trump and people like Kash Patel saying that violence against law enforcement is never accepted. Well, I agree with that proposition, but they don't agree with that proposition because they were perfectly fine with violence on January 6th against law enforcement. In fact, the president's very first act was to pardon hundreds of people that assaulted police officers on January 6th. The irony, of course, was made clear during Kash Patel's confirmation hearing when I asked him if he could turn and face the Capitol police officers who were part of that department that was assaulted on January 6th. and tell them he was proud of his actions in supporting those insurrectionists, he could not turn and face them.
So you're being considered for director of the FBI, and here you did no diligence to find out whether people you were associating with now the President of the United States in song were convicted of attacking police officers. Is that who we want running the FBI? I want you to turn around. There are Capitol Police officers behind you. They're guarding us. Take a look at them right now. Turn around.
I'm looking at you. You're talking to me.
No, look at them. I want you to look at them if you can, if you have the courage to look them in the eye, Mr. Patel, and tell them you're proud of what you did. Tell them you're proud that you raised money off of people that assaulted their colleagues, that pepper sprayed them, that beat them with poles. Tell them you're proud of what you did, Mr. Patel. They're right there. They're guarding you today. Tell them how proud you are.
That's an abject lie, and you know it. I've never, ever accepted violence against law enforcement. I've worked with these men and women, as you know,
you
my entire life.
glorified it in song,
and I did
Mr.
not
Patel.
make a...
So in addition to the misuse of Title X as a ostensible basis to call out the Guard, the president is also relying on nebulous claims of his power as commander-in-chief under Article 2. But if the president can merely rely on a generic claim of power under Article 2, then he can call out the military at any time. In fact, the Posse Comitatus Act of 1878 provides that you cannot use the military for traditional domestic law enforcement purposes. There are narrow exceptions to that. One is called the Insurrection Act, which would allow a president to call out the military if it's necessary to put down an insurrection or a rebellion or otherwise enforce the law when it is not capable of doing so with traditional law enforcement forces. The president has not invoked that Insurrection Act, but all of these escalatory actions may be a prelude to Donald Trump invoking the Insurrection Act or using his general Article 2 power to weaponize the military against the American people. This is the danger, that Donald Trump, through these indiscriminate sweeps in various parts of the country, through the improper deployment of the military, essentially creates the conditions of conflict and chaos, which will justify something that he wanted to do in his first administration in the wake of the George Floyd protests, and that is weaponize the military against the American people. That would be a dangerous Rubicon to cross, but he has already taken steps that are unprecedented, and it is all part of the autocrat's playbook.
Give me something! Give me something! Watch out, you got right here. Watch out, watch out.
Constitution, written by our founders, is intended to protect us against a threat identical to Donald Trump, someone who seeks power at all costs to get more power. And I understand very well why it is wrong to compare Adolf Hitler's Third Reich to any other movement. It was uniquely evil, full stop. I get it. But there are important lessons from the history of that emergent evil, and here is one that I regard as essential. In the immediate aftermath of World War II, a small group of philosophers who had escaped Hitler's murderous regime returned to Germany and performed a kind of moral autopsy on the Third Reich. The most famous of the so-called Frankfurt School of philosophers was a man named Jürgen Habermas. He described how the Nazis, and I quote again, attacked the very heart of the distinction between true and false, end quote. The Trump administration is insisting on trying to create their own preferred version of reality. They say Ukraine attacked Russia instead of the other way around, and expect us to believe it. At home, they attack heroes who have defended our nation in war and against cyber attacks as traitors.
Pete Hegseth's remarks. Pete Hegseth has only been adding fuel to the fire and pushing fascist and unconstitutional attacks on people they don't personally like or agree with, simply because they're a Democrat or because they're from a marginalized group or community. Pushing a white nationalist, fascist, and authoritarian style attack on the American people. Trump and the corrupt administration argue that Trump's policies are necessary for economic growth. However, others would counter that the policies disproportionately harm vulnerable populations. Trump's assault on democracy. The Trump administration's actions have been criticized for undermining democracy and the Constitution. The recent feud between Elon Musk and Donald Trump has raised concerns about Trump's mental fitness for office, with some questioning his ability to feel empathy or compassion at all. Watch this clip.
I want to take a moment to address what's going on in Los Angeles right now. Let's be clear. Trump's deployment of the National Guard and Marines in California is not about the protests. It is not about ICE, and it's really not about immigration. It's about using extremely dubious legal authority to expand his never-ending grasp for more power and his effort to move this country toward authoritarianism. This is a president, as you all know, who has usurped the constitutional responsibilities of Congress. He has threatened to impeach judges who rule against his policies. He has and is suing media for coverage that criticizes him. He has extorted money from law firms that have represented his opponents, and he is withholding funds from universities for teaching courses he doesn't like. In terms of what's happening in Los Angeles, let us understand that in our federalist form of government, local, state, federal, it is the governor of a state who deploys the National Guard, not the President of the United States. Trump's argument for his deployment of the troops is absurd and laughable. Does anyone really believe that we are in the midst of a foreign invasion or a rebellion against the United States? That, believe it or not, is his legal argument. Let's take stock of what Trump has done here. He has conducted massive illegal raids. He has provoked a counter-response, and then he has called in the troops. That is how an authoritarian rules. In this unprecedented moment in modern American history, it is imperative that all of us, no matter what our political views may be, stand together against the president who has little respect for the rule of law or our Constitution. The future of American democracy is at stake. Thank you very much.
First of all, thank you so much, BET. This is my first BET Award, so this means a lot to me. I grew up watching this. I do want to address what's happening right now outside of the building. There are ruthless attacks that are creating fear and chaos in our communities in the name of law and order. Trump is using military forces to stop a protest. And I want y'all to consider what kind of government it appears to be when every time we exercise our democratic right to protest, the military is deployed against us. What type of government is that? People are being swept up and torn from their families. And I feel it's my responsibility as an artist to use this moment to speak up for all oppressed people. For Black people, for Latino people, for trans people, for the people in Gaza. We all deserve to live in hope and not in fear. And I hope we stand together, my brothers and my sisters, against hate. And we protest against it. Thank you, BT.
All right, we have some major breaking news. Donald Trump, via Truth Social, has officially responded to Elon Musk's Epstein allegations, where 24 hours ago, Elon Musk sent out a tweet alleging that Donald Trump is in the Epstein files, and that is the real reason they have not been made public. Now, this tweet has gotten 1.2 million likes and over 200 million views, so you can safely assume Trump now feels like he's on the defense. The entire country is wondering how he's going to defend himself, and his answer was just not satisfactory. It was beyond that. His answer is creepy, and I want to dig a few layers deeper and really figure out what his answer is missing. We're going to talk about Epstein's lawyer. We're going to talk about the guy that got Epstein off and how Donald Trump helped this dude. But first, let's just start with Charlie Kirk's defense on his show today. Charlie Kirk is now in an insane twist of events saying, yeah, of course Trump was on the Epstein list. Who wasn't? Everyone in Palm Beach, Florida was.
Now, 10 years later, we're supposed to believe that there's going to be a smoking gun of something in the Epstein files. But what is in the Epstein files is, yes, President Donald Trump is probably mentioned. He was mentioned in the Epstein file dump back in February. You know why? He lived in Palm Beach. There's probably thousands of names in the Epstein files. Was he part of the Epstein client list? Absolutely not. That is complete nonsense. But to say that Donald Trump is not releasing the Epstein files because he's in them in some incriminating way, yes, it's very clear that if you live in Palm Beach, you might have been mentioned. And
what is this insane concession? I'm sorry. Charlie Kirk says things confidently and makes it seem like it's common sense, but he is just conceding right there. Of course, the president of the United States, of course, the guy I voted for is in the Epstein list. That's not normal. Not everybody in Palm Beach was in the Epstein list. Also, there are recordings of Epstein saying that him and Trump were best friends for 15 years. And Trump in an interview said, yeah, we all know Epstein likes them young. This was back in 2003. So no, Charlie Kirk, none of this is normal. The president is not engaging in normal activities. And the fact that you're defending him is absolutely absurd. It's very, very cult-like. Have you guys heard of Alexander Acosta? This is an incredibly, incredibly important part, and you always need to bring this up when talking about Trump and Jeffrey Epstein. Alexander Acosta was Trump's labor secretary. Trump nominated him in 2017. In 2017, Trump chose this guy. Now, if you want to go back to 2008, Alexander Acosta was the U.S. attorney for the Southern District of Florida, and he oversaw Jeffrey Epstein's original case for sexual abuse and things of the sort. The same thing he was caught for roughly a decade later in 2019 before he killed himself. Now, Acosta was then forced to resign in 2019 after Jeffrey Epstein was caught because when they reopened the Epstein investigation, they found that Alexander Acosta had been careless with the original 2008 investigation. They said he had exercised, quote, poor judgment in handling the investigation and allowing Epstein to get a plea deal that then allowed Epstein to continue to abuse. And then Donald Trump appointed this guy as the Secretary of Labor. What an absolutely disgusting person. And then he had to resign. This brings us on to Donald Trump's official response to Elon Musk's allegation. What Donald Trump decided to do was wait one day, see how bad the damage was, and then he realized, wow, this has 211 million views. And the one thing Elon did right in this thing is, weaponize Trump's Achilles heel against him. Trump has a fan base that is very primed towards conspiratorial thinking and throwing people under the bus. So he's like, I'm going to weaponize that. The greatest conspiracy of all, it's not even a conspiracy, there is an Epstein list, but they think every single Democrat is on it. I'm going to flip that and reverse it and show them that Trump is truly on it. And by the way, it's not a conspiracy. Trump is on it, but it's the perfect seed to plant in the brain of MAGA. Read how creepy this post is. Donald Trump on Truth Social reposted David Schoen. And this says, I was hired to lead Jeffrey Epstein's defense as his criminal lawyer 9 days before he died. He sought my advice for months before that. I can say authoritatively, unequivocally, and definitively that he had no information to hurt President Trump. I specifically asked him. Something about this is incredibly creepy. You were talking to Epstein about Trump 9 days before Epstein died? Who was the president at this time in 2019? Oh, wait, it was Donald Trump. Donald Trump was definitively, authoritatively, and unequivocally, if you want to use those words, the president of the United States when Jeffrey Epstein killed himself. Now, I'm of the opinion that he did kill himself, but Donald Trump was the president of the United States when this all went down. And you were talking to him 9 days before? The conspiracy theorists would go crazy. They would foam at the mouth if this was any Democrats. But David Schoen posts this odd thing that's just creepy and honestly makes Trump seem worse. Sorry. David Schoen didn't post this. The president of the United States himself reposted it. Why is the president of the United States fending off Epstein allegations when we have, number one, multiple peace deals falling through between Russia and Ukraine? There wasn't even a peace deal. Russia broke it immediately. You have peace deals falling through with India and Pakistan and Israel and Gaza. You also have deals falling through with every single country regarding trade. And then inside the country, domestically, your big ugly bill is also falling through because of Elon Musk. And while all of this is happening, Donald Trump is fending off Epstein allegations while Charlie Kirk is tripping over himself to defend Donald Trump. And Alexander Acosta is getting swept under the rug by MAGA because they want to keep blinders on and they don't understand what actually happened here. But look at this. Does anyone else think this post has the exact opposite effect of what Trump wants? I mean, he thinks this is exculpatory, like this makes him look better. But honestly, it makes him look worse. Midas Touch said, Trump posts a statement from lawyer David Schoen, who represented both Epstein and Trump, denying that Epstein had any incriminating information on Trump. Interestingly, Schoen says he asked Epstein that exact question just days before Epstein's death. Very curious. And also, if Schoen has both Epstein and Trump as a client, he wouldn't be able to even give that information out in the first place. As Ron Filipkowski points out regarding the same tweet that Trump posted, it just so happens that he was also Trump's lawyer, so he can't reveal anything that would hurt his client Trump without facing disbarment. So Trump is citing his own lawyer, or ex-lawyer if you want to say, either way. Trump is citing someone who represented him and Epstein to run defense for him and Epstein's connection. What an absolute genius. And you know what the worst part is? MAGA is going to accept this at face value. People like Charlie Kirk will absolutely eat this up when if this were a Democrat, imagine a Democrat's lawyer, like let's say Chuck Schumer or Hunter Biden. The lawyer says, I was talking to Epstein about Hunter Biden 9 days before he died. Give me a break. Republicans' heads would absolutely explode. Either way, I'm going to leave it at that.
Conclusion. The Trump-Musk feud and the proposed healthcare cuts and tax hikes have significant implications for the nation. As this situation unfolds, it's essential to prioritize the well-being of all Americans, particularly the most vulnerable populations. There were more than 2,100 protests last Saturday. They continued to grow up until the day of, as the lawless fascist cult pushed unconstitutional, illegal actions, literally threatening peaceful protesters that if they protested his disastrous, embarrassing birthday parade, that was more of a joke and a waste of taxpayer money than anything. They should have used that money, honestly, to take care of the veterans they neglect and ignore, instead of having militants marching out of lockstep in squeaky tanks that needed oiled. Trump and the corrupt administration are threatening elected officials and anyone that calls them out for their lawlessness and unconstitutional actions they keep pushing onto the public, literally instigating problems, treating people inhumanely, and violating their constitutional rights. Trump then gets online, makes posts acting like he all of a sudden had a change of heart for the immigrants working in hotels, healthcare, and agriculture, as these raids will literally leave crops to rot. Food prices will soar. Seniors will have immigrants from home health care that will be taken away and will be left without anyone to care for them. I could go on and on and on. And of course, he was just trying to make people think that he was really concerned about essential workers, because at the end of the day, they don't care about anyone but themselves. And I'm not so sure that Trump even has anything. I'm pretty sure that Stephen Miller is the one literally like having conniption fits because they're not arresting or disappearing enough people. It's just unfathomable. I mean, it's disgusting what is going on. And all we can do is organize, call them out for their wrongdoing and injustices, and be sure that we explain the importance to everyone why we need to vote and get these people out of office, especially by next year when the next elections are next year. I want to thank each and every one of you for being part of this journey. Your engagement and support mean everything to me. If you would like to support our mission further, be sure to check out our upcoming merchandise, with partial proceeds going to institutions like the NCAA and ACLU and other defenders of democracy and freedom. If I can just once again thank you for watching and supporting our channel. And if you haven't already, if I could just remind you to please like this video, subscribe if you haven't yet, and be sure to share our videos on your social media platforms and get the message out to the masses. It takes a village. Together we can ensure a brighter tomorrow. Thank you for your support, and as always, be kind to others and be kind to yourself.